Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And good morning to you, and welcome to Wednesday, October 17th. I have been avoiding talking about this Saudi killing. But today there's so much news out about it that I don't think I can avoid it anymore. And I have to tell you that I find it actually rather difficult to talk about some of this because it is so horrific, and no matter what angle you choose to look at it. The facts are pretty well known with this thing. The Turks have an audio recording of what went on in there. Now, I haven't seen anybody explain how the Turks have an audio recording unless they had bugged the Saudi embassy, which I suppose is perfectly believable. But whatever audio they have apparently has been shared with the United States. Whether it's been shared with our president or our Secretary of State, one can only imagine. I am looking at a video of our Secretary of State, Pompeo, who yesterday saw the Crown Prince and the King, and met with both of them. And the video alone of his meetings with these two is enough to make you puke. Here is a Secretary of State of the United States of America dispatched to Saudi Arabia for one reason, and one reason only, and that is to supposedly warn them, tell them in no uncertain terms that if they had anything to do with the killing of this legal American resident and journalist, that there would be hell to pay. So all the video of the meetings of our Secretary of State with the Prince and the King are of him grinning ear to ear. There was no stern-faced Pompeo. It was a, hey, buddy, how are you look? Not kidding. These guys don't even bother to play act the kind of demeanor that they should be showing to the world. They don't give a, they do not care. They are that secure in their power that they will do this little charade, this dance, and they won't bother playing their parts very, very well. I'm also looking at a video in which Pompeo is interviewed by reporters at the Riyadh airport. And here is just one little exchange. This tells you everything you need to know. This is true. I heard it with my own ears. I'm seeing it, and here it is. The reporter says to Pompeo, "Did they say that Khashoggi was alive or dead?" And Pompeo's response, I kid you not, is, "I don't want to talk about any of the facts. They didn't want to either." I don't want to talk about any of the facts. They didn't want to either. He then went on to say, they said that they are going to be doing this very rigorous investigation of themselves. And we, of course, credulous to the last, will believe everything they tell us. Meanwhile, back to the pesky audio recording. A number of news sources have been reporting the same thing. from a lot of Middle Eastern news sources, Al Jazeera, and others, but also the Wall Street Journal today. So throw the Wall Street Journal in there too, if for some reason you're not going to believe the Arab press. Here's increasingly what's coming out, that the Turks are saying that they are the ones who are telling us everything we do know. There is no doubt that Khashoggi was killed almost immediately upon entering the Saudi embassy, that he was beaten and drugged, and then they proceeded to dismember him. There was no interrogation. It was only to kill him, and they killed him in the office of the Saudi Consul General. The Saudi Consul General was apparently in the room, although on the audio he is asked to leave when they start cutting up the body. In fact, the guy who's wielding the bone saw says to others in the room, "You might want to listen to some music." There is one report that they began cutting Khashoggi up before he was dead. All right. And according to all these press accounts, Turkey has given this audio to both the United States and Saudi Arabia. There is another story circulating, who knows if it's true, that one of the members of this 15-member hit squad that flew in to Istanbul the day of the murder and flew out after, I guess each one carrying a part of the body, I don't know where the body ended up, that one of the 15 people was a guy who looked almost exactly like Khashoggi. And that the original plan was, of course, to immediately kill Khashoggi, but then put this look-alike, this imposter, in his place using his passport, where he would travel to Lebanon, and then he would be arrested and supposedly taken to Saudi Arabia, where he would be tried and jailed, and that'd be the end of him. He'd be in jail even though he's dead. Who knows? We are one of the despicable nations of the world now. We have a government that colludes, aids, abets, turns a blind eye, engages in propaganda campaigns, spreads lies. Remember what you used to think of the United States of America? I mean, in our better iterations, that we were a country that did value truth, that abhorred this kind of extrajudicial violence and authoritarian governments. You are seeing our country act now, just like Putin's Russian government, like Duterte's Filipino government. I mean, name any country that is essentially autocratic, where the government dispenses regularly total lies, tells them right to the faces of the populace, tells the populace that things they might have seen that suggest those are lies are fake news, tells the populace that the news media is the enemy of the people, helps cover up the brutal, unbearably horrific, barbarous murder of a journalist for the Washington Post and a critic of the Saudi regime. So, Wall Street Journal today, I read it to you. Turkish officials say they have shared their evidence, including the details of an audio recording with both the United States and Saudi Arabia, to support their conclusion that Mr. Khashoggi was killed at the embassy. This story also, of course, has Secretary of State Pompeo's contention that the king and the crown prince strongly denied any involvement, and Secretary Pompeo's credulous statement that the Saudis are conducting a serious and credible investigation. To which I can only say incredible. Incredible. How stupid do they think we are? How willing to abandon any principles that we have been taught since the time we went to kindergarten about what our country was about. And then, of course, you have the monster president. Quite clearly being the person who first put out there for the Saudis this idea that these were rogue killers. That, in other words, these 15 guys who flew out of Riyadh with the bone saw and the Khashoggi look-alike was a rogue operation where they dismembered him in the Saudi Consul General's office. Yeah, that sounds like a rogue operation to me. And they might suggest that it was just, they were supposed to just interrogate him and bring him back. This was a rendition. In other words, a kidnapping. That's what it was supposed to be, and this just kidnapping went awry. But that begs a lot of questions, right? Why do you bring a bone saw to a kidnapping? And a kidnapping is also a felony. A barbarous murder is a felony. It is and we now are possessed of a government, our own government, the representatives of we the people. So we the people buying into this barbarous murder of a journalist who dared to criticize his country's government. Probably Donald Trump would like to be able to do what they did to Khashoggi to a number of journalists here in the United States. And who knows, give him a few years and maybe we'll start seeing that too. The reality is this will lead to more and more killings of journalists. There's no doubt about that. It's, well, We have a caller. Caller, go ahead, please.
How you doing today?
Well,
Hey, Lynn, what I was going to say is, if you were a journalist over here, and you were writing, we know that Saudi Arabia's murders people. They always been. They're covering it up. I understand that. But if you were writing all kind of criticisms of another country, why in the fuck would you go over near that country? Why would you go even close to that country for them to do that? I mean, I feel sorry for the guy, the family, whatever, but it's just another thing I don't get. If you're a critic of a country, if you write about Russia and this, I'm going to go to Russia. Well, there's always that chance that you're going to get killed. They're going to get you. And he was well known as a critic for them, so he should have stayed here in America. He really should have. And the people that he worked for should have said, you shouldn't leave the country if you're writing that kind of stuff. And I say it's great that he writes, because that's what they need, criticism, because that country is murderous. And then the second thing I wanted to tell you that you might not know. Did you know Merrick Garland, that guy they wanted in, which was
yes,
moderate.
The
No,
guy
I don't want to even go back.
Supposed to be on the court.
Yeah.
Yes, Merrick Garland.
Right. Well, did you know? Now, the Democrats don't tell you this. Now, I don't like this Kavanaugh. He's an asshole. I don't want him in there. No. He voted 93% of the time with Merrick Garland. So I bet you didn't know that.
You mean
So,
Kavanaugh did when they served on the same the same appeals court, same
93%
circuit.
of the time. So look it up. I was like shocked. So aren't the Democrats kind of like exaggerating this a little bit? Now I know he's no damn good, and he might try to change the abortion laws and that, but they really, really put on a show about this guy's this. When they like the other guy real well, when this guy votes the same as him.
Well,
So, I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a few things to say about all the things you said.
I'm sure you do.
You can stay on if you'd like. I just want to say that in regard to Merrick Garland and Kavanaugh maybe voting on the same side of whatever cases came to that circuit, that maybe is not all that unusual. It's the 7% where they diverge.
I knew you were going to say that.
Because, first of all, Merrick Garland was a moderate. He was Obama was going like Democrats go. He was saying, well, I'm only going to get, can't put a real progressive on, but I'm going to stick a good man who's very moderate on. So Merrick Garland is moderate to start with, right? Progressives don't necessarily love a lot of the choices he made in his decisions. But, most cases, I think the reality is that probably if you look at the Supreme Court as it exists, or maybe even the circuit courts, I think most of the cases do end up as unanimous. A lot of them do. So that, they're about contracts, they're about this, they're about that. And, this flashpoint political stuff doesn't enter into every case. Right. So, but again, that's a pretty startling number. But I think it suggests that, Merrick Garland was hardly a progressive. And let's acknowledge that so many of the cases that go before the courts are not part of the political realm as much as they are of, just legal findings that judges of either stripe will come down on the same side with. Again, the other thing you said about Khashoggi going to, he was in Turkey. He was not in Saudi Arabia. He was not intending to go to Saudi Arabia, but he needed.
Still, it's close.
He needed.
It's overseas.
Something with his passport. I know his fiance warned him, said, I don't think you should go in there. She was scared. It's why she was waiting outside, just pacing and pacing and pacing. She waited out there for him. She was terrified he was walking into a trap. He was, people exist he loved his country. He loves Saudi Arabia. He wants it to be better. He was missing his family, missing his friends, missing everything. And I don't know what to tell you. He obviously took a leap of faith. He had stopped. Here's what happened. He had stopped at the Saudi embassy a week or so earlier. Nothing happened. They'd been very cordial to him. Okay, so the trap got set, and he had said, I need this or that, and they said, well, you'll have to come back. You'll have to make an appointment. Once they knew when he was coming back, that's when the hit squad got formed. But they faked him out by being so nice to him on the initial visit. I don't know. So, he's a human being. He wanted to believe he could get this done. I don't know. He's dead. It's a big mistake he made. Hey, thank you for your call. I always appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep.
Bye. Jeez. Well, maybe. Canada's looking better, ain't it? You don't have to be ashamed to be a Canadian. Do you? Well, I'm sure governments are always doing something you might be ashamed about, but you know, I would like to know, feel, even for a moment, again, what it's like to not feel shame because of your country, that you're a part of it, that things are being done in your name, that you have somehow and your cohort have failed and are relatively powerless, even though you have more numbers. It's weird. Anyway, Canada's looking better. At midnight, Canada became the second country in the world to legalize marijuana, recreational use of marijuana. There's only one other country who had done that. It was Uruguay. So Canada, yeah, it's a hop, skip, and a jump from here. Canada now has recreational pot available to anybody over 19 and older. So, bet there's going to be a lot of more tourism there. Used to be you had to schlep all the way over to Amsterdam back in the day, right? So, yeah, Canada. This was one of Justin Trudeau's campaign promises. And of course, nobody in a million years believed that he would be able to pull it off. I think it's pretty amazing that the whole nation, you know, we've got states doing it, we've got cities doing it, but no other federal government other than Uruguay has done it. Also, they are looking back to the people who are in their jails serving sentences having to do with marijuana possession. And those people who they feel deserve it will be pardoned, although the government is saying there will not be a blanket amnesty. But as a matter of basic fairness, they're going to make it a lot easier for people who are jailed because of marijuana offenses to apply for a pardon. So the stores are open there already, the pot stores. People can have quite a bit of pot for recreational use on hand. and they can also have 4 plants. This is not without controversy in Canada. There is concern about more people becoming addicted to it. There's concern about safety on the highways, and we'll see. Canada is letting its 13 provinces and territories set their own rules, which does also then create a kind of a mess of different regulations. But that has to do with, whether police will test drivers for marijuana intoxication and how you do that. Edibles will not be legal for another year. And there it is, Canada. So, another reason to cast our eyes northward. Here's a kind of headline that you see in this country now. This headline actually tells the entire story, but what a cabal of creeps and despicable human beings. Listen to this headline. This is from CNBC. Pro-Trump pimp, Nevada GOP Assembly candidate Dennis Hoff dies after birthday party with Grover Norquist, Joe Arpaio, and porn legend Ron Jeremy. This is the Republican candidate for the Nevada legislature who himself, if asked, what is your occupation, he'll say, I'm a pimp. He's very pro-Trump, and you can see his friends. Grover Norquist, who started the Republican Party on the road. We now see where that road is ending. But Grover Norquist, who was the no-tax guy, who said he wanted to shrink government. First of all, in order to shrink government, you have to starve it. In order to starve it, you don't tax people. So there's no tax revenues coming in to allow a government to have any money to do anything with. So Grover Norquist famously said, I want to shrink the government so small I can drown it in a bathtub. And so, tax cuts to the rich. We, by the way, have a deficit that is out of control. It's going to blow right through the $1 trillion mark. This is what happens when Republicans, they are just, it's easier to win if you're shameless, and they're shameless. Because if you have shame, if you feel shame, that stops you from saying certain things, from doing certain things. And here's the problem. Democrats are capable of shame. Republicans are not. So, Katie, bar the door. You can do anything. Yeah, Dennis Hoff, the notorious pimp and Republican candidate for Nevada's legislature, he died hours after his 72nd birthday and campaign rally celebration. Yep, he died at his very own Love Ranch, one of his brothels, which is legal in Nevada. Multiple former employees of his, prostitutes, had accused him of sexual assault, and that's another thing where we know that Republicans just love candidates who have been accused of sexual assault. They seem to love him more than... It seems to be actually something that helps them. So, upon hearing the tape of their presidential candidates, talking about, laughing about sexually assaulting women, they elected him. They loved him even more. I was listening to audio of things Trump has said since he's been in our heads over the last 2.5 years. And I've been listening to the reaction of the crowds that he says these things to. They eat it up. The misogyny. The ugly stuff he says about women. They laugh. They roar with delight. They love him even more. So, he calls them fat and ugly. They love it. He calls a woman who had been in his employ crazed, crying, lowlife, a dog. Says of another, it's got the face of a pig, and his base loves him. He did it again, of course, yesterday with the reason I'm hearing these things again to Stormy Daniels, calling her horseface. This is our president. And again, if you don't feel shame, just sort of abject shame, then I think something's wrong with you, character-wise. And the roaring crowds that love him, that are made up of tons of women, white women, they roar with delight at him saying these things about other women. So what we have talked about a little bit in the last few weeks about how women, because they have been a subjugated gender, that a lot of women have made the calculation that they will join the powerful side and gain power as a result. So there are a majority of white women voted for Donald Trump. There was a white woman running who they hated because their husbands hated her. Because they identify with the misogynists. They identify with their men who are fearful of these uppity women, who didn't used to have to compete with them for positions, whether it's in schools or in the employment sector. Used to be white manville very recently, right? So the rage these white guys feel is still raw. And it brought us Donald Trump as president because there's enough of the white guys and enough of their women. "53% of white women," that's my crowd, I'm a white woman, 53% of us voted for Donald Trump. Was it Republican women? No, it was white women. White women. It's hard for me. Hard for me to even think about it. And it scares me, heading into the election. The thing about Trump saying these kinds of things just less than a month before the election is that I can't imagine that's going to help certain Republican candidates, because there are women, and mostly they are white women. They're those suburban, educated white women who tend to be appalled by the president, even if they support his policies. I don't know. So, I mean, think of what he said about Ted Cruz's wife, and then look at how he's going to Texas, and Ted Cruz is going to welcome him with open arms, even though he trashed his wife. What's wrong with these people? It's just mind-blowing to me. Okay, what we got here? I wasn't going to because it's so long, but I'll read it to you because it's damn good. Can't say it changed my mind since I'm so set in my ways on this. But, I did another of my rants on artificial intelligence, finishing us all off. That was a result of the new book posthumously published of Stephen Hawking, the physicist, who in the book suggests that artificial intelligence will lead to essentially a caste system where there will be some superhumans able to fiddle with their DNA for a price. So these will be the rich people, could pull away from the rest of us ordinary, non-enhanced humans. And it was, those of you who heard it, I mean, it was fit right into my general fear of artificial intelligence, AI. So Ray, who doesn't like to call, I think he's only called once. He called once, maybe twice, but writes good emails. He wrote me, and I don't even know if he wanted this shared because it's really, he wrote a little essay, and I was not going to share it, but I got the time, and it's good. So this is, Ray would have called and said it, but it's much better when you can sit and write, right? Here's what he says. I wish you would stop worrying about the existential threat of artificial intelligence. The fear-mongering by the AI experts and all their sycophants. Is it sycophant or sycophant? Sycophant, I think. Makes me laugh. Not worry. He says, not worry. Decades of promises of AI just around the corner have progressed to, well, 5 years from now, and then 20 years from now, all the way to, well, by the year 2100. He says there's no way we'll be able to say, see, you were wrong about that, because they keep pushing the goalpost back, and we'll be all dead by then, right? So he goes on. Poor Professor Turing, who broke out the computation machine, started this conflation of computation with thinking. He invented the Turing test, where if a machine could fool judges into believing they were interacting with a human, the inventor would win $100,000. The prize has yet to be claimed. Professor Noam Chomsky has a good response to the question, can machines think? He laughs and says, that's like asking if submarines swim. Swimming is what living creatures do, and thinking is what conscious beings do. Thinking is not computing. Thinking requires consciousness, and no one in AI has made the least progress in figuring out how the brain creates consciousness. This gets a little heavy, but I get the point about the difference between thinking and computation, which is what computers essentially do, right? He says there is a great refuting of the equating computation with understanding, which requires consciousness. See, this is hard to, seems to me. Okay, so this guy named Searle proposed a mind experiment called the Chinese room. It goes sort of like this. I put you in a room with a door with a slot in it. I give you a box of cards with Chinese symbols on them. Through the slot come similar cards inserted by Chinese speakers. You have a book listing what Chinese symbols you should push back through the slot in response. After time, you get so good at matching that the people outside believe they are interacting with another Chinese speaker. So according to the artificial intelligence type, you now understand Chinese. You are the CPU, and the book is the program, and the cards are the interface. You're losing me here. The fact is, you do not understand Chinese any more than Google Translate understands French. You have consciousness, and the computer arranges the zeros and ones. When scientists came up with the artificial heart, they first had to know how the heart worked. It didn't just pulse to a beat, it pumped blood. If they just stuck a red lump of meat in your chest that throbbed to a rhythm, it would look like a heart, but you'd be dead. These AI frauds won't admit they are trying to create an artificial brain without ever solving the real problem. How does the brain work? They want to believe that impersonating a brain, computation, is sufficient to create consciousness. Poppycock. Almost done here. Some speculate that if they somehow integrate bigger and bigger computers together, that some kind of critical mass will occur and poof, consciousness will appear spontaneously. It's nice to believe in miracles and angels. Maybe consciousness is an irreducible aspect of biological existence, like electromagnetism is an irreducible aspect of the physical existence. Professor Richard Feynman would say that electromagnetism is just something we will have to take as a given. He couldn't explain it using anything else like rubber bands or springs, because those things use electromagnetism, and they say science doesn't involve faith. Oh, Jesus. Okay, well, here he ends up with. Until these AI blowhards accept the need to incorporate consciousness as one of the necessary components of AI, all they will produce will be more and more complicated marionettes. And until the neuroscientists figure out what consciousness is and how it arises, good luck with that. And as far as loading people up into machines, cyberguising ourselves, what will they load up? What will they load up? Data? We are not data. I'll worry about robots when these geniuses can make a self-driving car that hates driving. Okay. We have a call? Hello, caller.
Hello.
Hi.
Clarence Canonsburg.
Yeah.
He kind of defeated his argument at the end. When you were reading at the end, I called before you got to the end.
Okay.
By the way, that creating a car that hates driving is funny.
Yes, that is funny.
Consciousness. He said when neuroscientists figure out what consciousness is,
yeah,
and that's the point. We don't know what consciousness is, and his argument is based on consciousness. So how do we know when an AI is conscious when we don't know what consciousness is? You know what I mean? Consciousness is one of those things that all of us as an individual feel that we have, or you could say know that we have. It's like porn. You know it when you see it. But you can't. I can't put my do a Spock thing and put my hand on your head and realize that you're consciousness. I only assume that you're consciousness because I'm conscious. That makes sense?
Yeah,
You know
and
what I mean?
and you're saying that how do we know that that some robot does not have consciousness?
Consciousness. Yeah, we don't even know with animals, other biological.
That's right. We're not even right.
Have consciousness. So how are we going to tell whether an AI is conscious or not? So that's if it looks conscious and acts conscious, that you can't tell that it's conscious or not. You have to assume, like you assume with other human beings, that it's conscious. Do you?
Yeah.
If we that almost defeats the own argument. He based it on consciousness, but we don't know what consciousness is.
Well, I'll have to put you two in a room, and you can figure it out, because
there are actually arguments like this. There are actually arguments like this with between Sam Harris and Dan Bennett.
Okay, I don't know who Dan Bennett is. I know Sam Harris.
Oh, Dan Bennett. You like this guy. He's a philosopher, like a scientific philosopher.
Okay.
And he gives like these talks and things like that all the time, and I'm always listening to them. And I just listened to one recently in Great Britain that he had with a guy, about consciousness and things like that. From it was like at Oxford University. The internet's great for this kind of stuff, by the way. So yeah, that's always got me. Consciousness. Do we, is consciousness a thing or just an illusion of our brains? You know what I mean? Because we are basically, our neurons basically operate like a computer system.
Right.
The brain's the hardware.
Right.
And then we get all these inputs as software. We have like apps that go onto our brains.
Yeah.
Like Richard Dawkins would describe them as like memes. All these ideas and thoughts and things like that are like the software. So we're just biological computers. That's one argument. I haven't said I agree with it or don't agree with it. I don't know.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, the body the body obviously is a extraordinarily intricate machine of
It's a machine.
It's a machine. It's just amazing. Machine.
Yeah.
And that's doctors are repairmen who, repair machines, our machines when they break down, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the consciousness aspect is above and beyond the machine. the machinery
and
of
if you
us.
think, and that's the thing, people think, and this is what brings up religion, that there's something that's in your brain, something in you that isn't connected to your biology. That isn't connected to matter.
Well, that's like the soul. Then it's the soul. Is consciousness the soul? Because that's what the hell is that? Yeah.
Exactly. But I always go back to, it feels like there's something. I think it's called the Cartesian theater or something like it. Like there's something behind your eyes that's looking out when there's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's there was I don't know if you've seen Men in Black, where there was this little guy inside this guy's head operating his body. It's like the Cartesian theater. There's nothing there. There's just firing neurons in the brain, and
right.
Even your sight isn't located in one part of your brain.
Right.
Even when you look out, color and distance and all that stuff are in different parts of your brain.
Well, no, your eyes don't really see. It's your brain that sees. Your brain is interpreting what your eye is sending it. Yeah.
You ever see? There's a thing called blind sight. You ever look that up? People who can't see but can navigate.
Yeah.
Because they can't see color and light, but they can detect stuff like shadows and things like that. They can see, but they really can't see. You know what I mean? Because their brain, parts of their brain, are still operational.
Right.
But they can't read or anything like that. But they can navigate through the world. Interesting, huh?
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. I wish I had a better brain up there so I could.
But the thing is that you have the brain, you just don't have the time. If you were like me and could sit around listening to this crap as you draw funny pictures.
Well, hey, thank you. I appreciate it. We actually have another caller. I don't know what side they'll be on.
Right.
Thanks, Clarence. Bye.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. Bye. Okay. Hey, caller, if you hear a little beep, you're on.
Hey, Lynn, it's Ray.
Oh my God, Clarence, you scared Ray out.
I wish you could have kept Clarence on, so I could have spoken to him.
Yeah. Well, so listen. We can listen.
Hey, Lynn, here's the thing.
We can barely take a
Can
phone
you imagine,
call. Yeah.
Imagine the crazy idea that consciousness is an illusion. Well, you have to be conscious to experience the illusion.
If
that whole argument that am I really? It's silliness. It's sophomoric, all right? To figure out what consciousness isn't to determine whether it exists or not. It's like, what is it? It's sort of like pain. Pain is subjective in the sense that you're experiencing it, but you're not going to say until you're not going to debate whether pain exists. But to define pain. Okay, it's neurons and interaction of chemical responses. That's the definition of it, but that's not the experience of it, right?
Yeah.
All right. Consciousness.
I'd like to smoke a joint right now because I think I could really understand this better. I'm serious. Go ahead.
Yeah. Right. You have to, and the old Cartesian, I think, therefore I am. Actually, it's probably I am, therefore I think. The consciousness apparently is like a unified field that the brain, no matter how small or big, creates some level of consciousness. All right, and it's an organic biological system. We know pain exists, but for years we didn't know what was that. Well, researchers figured out by mapping and imaging. Oh, okay, this is what pain is, and this is how we answer it. This is how we can deaden pain. These are the analgesics. Well, we have to do the same with consciousness. We know it's there, and it's up to the neurobiologists and neurophysicists to figure out, okay, what is it? And can it be reproduced? Can it be transmitted? But until they admit that, they're just making imitations.
Okay,
they're
but if
puppets.
we can't even really define it. So is it the same when some people talk
sure
about
it is.
Wait.
We can define it.
When some people talk about the soul, is that the same as consciousness?
No.
Why?
Okay. No. Consciousness is that those collective feelings and sensations that identify being alive to any organism. That's all it is.
So animals animals have consciousness.
I know my dog does. Now,
there you go.
The flea on the back of my dog, I don't know. Maybe, consciousness, there's levels of consciousness. But I know my dog's conscious.
Yes. Mine too.
Right?
Yes.
You don't, it's like this water. Water, on some level, you simply define it as a clear, flavorless liquid. Okay, that's water. But then when the researchers get into it, they say, well, it's H2O. Well, it's both things, right?
Yeah. Right.
Right. But when you're talking about water, you're not talking about H2O. You're talking about
the liquid.
Water.
Yeah.
The liquid. Right. Now, what causes consciousness? What is the interaction of the biological structures, and how do our perceptions modify our consciousness? Okay, that's all the H2O stuff. But Lynn, you are conscious. You know it.
At the moment, I think I am, yeah. Yeah.
Anyways.
I've been unconscious, too, so I do, yeah, there's well, listen, I would love, it'd be great to have you guys go at it, and I'm getting people saying, take a peek at Julian Jaynes' book, The Origin of Consciousness, in the breakdown of the bicameral mind. Oy.
Okay.
Do you know that one?
And I don't know that one particularly. I do recommend anything you can read or hear by John Searle.
Right.
Who is easy to understand. He's less academic and much more realistic, and he can take you down the road that I'm thinking, that I tend to agree with.
Okay.
But whenever you start to get into the actual AI people, they once again start making arguments that no one's making. They want to talk about computational capacities, and that I'm not worried about an angry robot till you figure out what angry is, right?
Oh, jeez. Well, I think you're whistling past the graveyard. That's what I think.
Don't be afraid.
You cannot assuage my absolute fear. But I appreciate the attempt. I really do. And I really appreciate the call. So thank you, Ray.
All right.
Bye.
All right, you're welcome.
Goodbye.
You have a great day.
You too. Bye. Jeez. Well, here's what I think we have just managed to prove. I have the smartest audience of any. You name another talk show that's got an audience capable of having this conversation. Unfortunately, I am not capable of having this conversation. I didn't even understand everything that Ray wrote in his piece. Jesus. Hey, I want to tell you that tomorrow, for half the show, we're going to have Patrick Dowd joining us. He is part of this group that has planted a ballot question on the ballots in Allegheny County that would create a fund and an agency of sorts that would deal with children's schooling and stuff. To me, it's so amorphous and confusing. That's why Patrick's coming on. But you are, when you show up to vote, if you're in Allegheny County, going to be asked to say yes or no on this. And I'm sort of like, it sounds good. It sounds like if you vote yes, you're voting for helping children. Who's going to say no to that? On the other hand, there are people who do want to help children who have some serious questions about it. So we're not going to be getting that side tomorrow with Patrick Dowd. We're going to be getting a strong supporter side. So pass the word, and if you have concerns, I'm doing this just like the League of Women Voters. I just want us to understand and be able to cast an intelligent vote on an important issue. It does involve raising taxes, to fund this thing. So, thank you all very much. I think I should decamp, and I fully intend to. So I'll see you tomorrow. Half the show will be that. The other half, don't have a clue. We'll find out tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.
Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.